Hello, chapter 11 today, letters from the Lighthouse. The next chapter title has exactly the same message. Walls have ears. That was a really well-known one. Walls have ears. It means that you might not see that somebody's listening, but they could be hiding. They might be listening to what you're saying. So keep those secrets ashtum. Walls have ears. That night I lay awake in my unfamiliar bed. Every few minutes when the lighthouse beam turned, the brightness was so strong it came through the blackout curtains, catching the surface of my seashell and making me think of Dad. The last time he'd been on home leave, I'd found him out in our yard staring at the coal shed. Beckoning me over, he gave me a leg up and told me to look at the bird. It was a pigeon lying amongst the old leaves. It didn't look like the normal greasy feathered kind. This one was a lovely grey colour with white around its neck. "It's not moving," I had said. "Poor thing's dead," Dad explained. "From exhaustion, I expect." "Or from Gloria's cat. You got 2 blackbirds and a mouse last week," I told him. Dad pointed to the bird's left leg, which stuck out stiff as a twig from its body. "See that metal cylinder?" Craning my neck, I could just see what looked like one of Zuki's lipsticks tied onto the bird. "This pigeon's probably flown all the way from Europe. There'll be a message inside that, something important from the front line." He told me that's what pigeons were used for nowadays, to send messages from places where the post couldn't reach. "Can we open it?" I had asked. "Of course not." Dad sounded horrified and put me down on the ground. "That message will be top secret. We need to hand it over, Olive, to the authorities as quickly as we can." I can't remember what happened next. A call to the Ministry of Defence, I supposed, or the police. What stuck with me was the sight of that dead bird. It must have flown over France, over the English Channel, reaching us just as the little pigeon heart gave out. And after all that effort, the least we could have done was read the message. It seemed so important that we did. It felt a bit like that with Zuki's note. Not being able to read it was so frustrating. We still didn't know anything about her whereabouts, not even if she was dead or alive. We didn't have the note anymore, either. Esther did. "Olive," Cliff was awake. "Go back to sleep." I turned over to face the wall. "I can't. I need to tell you something." Sighing, I rolled over again to see Cliff out of bed and crossing the room towards me. Lifting up the bedclothes, he slipped in beside me, warm as toast and not in the slightest bit sleepy. "I got it back off Esther," he whispered, pushing a piece of paper into my hand. "Just before she elbowed me, I snatched it from her pocket." It was Zuki's note. "Thanks awfully," I cried, ruffling Cliff's hair. "You're brilliant, you are." So Esther hadn't been lying when she said she didn't have it, because by then Cliff had already got it back. I was thrilled to have it again. "Olive," Cliff's tone was so serious suddenly that my stomach tightened. "Do you think Esther was right?" "About what?" I asked warily. But I knew what he meant. He'd read the note again, or tried to. The code made it impossible. He was wondering if his big sister was a spy. I didn't blame him. She was, after all, the bravest, cleverest person I knew. If anyone could outwit the Germans, I put my pocket money on it being Zuki. In the books I'd read, though, spies worked alone, whereas Zuki had lots of friends. People from her school days, people at work. She had a pen pal too, who she'd written to every night. Although I was beginning to wonder how much of the pal part Queenie really was. I breathed deeply. I don't think she's a spy. I don't reckon she went missing in the air raid either. Cliff was quiet as he took that in. "Well, where is she then?" I thought about the man she'd met, the foreign map in the drawer at home, about what I'd tried to see on Queenie's table earlier, and Ephraim's strict house rules. I don't know, I said carefully. Yet. All these things might have been random clues, or they might somehow link together. As we lay there, side by side, I could almost feel the certainty growing in my mind. Ephraim and Queenie were hiding things from us, and Zuki definitely wasn't the sort of person to work alone. The next morning, in the bright light of day, the code looked so simple. I shall show you again. I know it's back to front, but just to give you an idea of what it might have looked like. Day 9, I 26.8 T/UI, J 26.9 16.19.12 6.8I, B 26T-50.26, B 12.13.20 plus 3.6. Whichever way I read it, back to front, upside down, top to bottom, I couldn't work out what it meant. Oh, I give up, I groaned. We were in the sitting room part of the Lighthouse. The table was full of dirty breakfast things which we didn't dare wash up. Day 9, that's easy. It means in 9 days' time, said Cliff. I got the sense he wasn't giving it his full attention, not with Pixie at his feet, begging toast crumbs. Very good, clever clogs, but starting from when? He shrugged. The night at the cinema? It was possible. Or it could be 9 o'clock in the morning, or an unknown date in the past or future. Oh, there were so many different meanings, and we were only on the first line. Exasperated, I flopped into the nearest chair. Maybe codes were a bit like crosswords. The more you stared at them, the harder they got to solve. Putting the note in my skirt pocket, I decided to give my brain a break from it. Pixie by now had got bored and fallen asleep, and Cliff was gazing out of the window through a pair of binoculars. The room was quiet. From this particular seat near the stairs, I discovered I could hear Ephraim at work in the control room above us. The crackles and beeps told me he was talking on a radio, and he'd say things like squalls and riptides and knots and coordinates, which sounded impressive, though I didn't know what they meant. The other noise was a familiar click-clack sound that went on long after the radio conversation was over. Yesterday, I'd seen balls of wool here on the chair, a half-finished sock. Needles. Ephraim was knitting by the sounds of it. That's what the click-clack sound was. Very fast. So, said Cliff when I told him to listen. He turned from the window to look at me through the binoculars. It was rather disconcerting. Everyone knits, don't they? Certainly Mum and Gloria did. They made socks for our troops, but only a few pairs each. Usually it was around Christmas time, and they'd parcel them up with chocolate bars and pipe tobacco to send off to a British Forces address somewhere abroad. But it wasn't Christmas now, and yet upstairs Ephraim sounded like he was going for a knitting world record. Whoever he was making all these socks for had clearly very cold feet, or needed warm clothes in a hurry. Intriguing. Who is he knitting socks for? Maybe we'll find out in the next chapter. Bye-bye.